Hello traders, it's Samurai Trader back here. I just recorded a few minutes ago a T89 come pivot bounce trade off the upper pivot, which is a little hard for you to see right now. It's just up above the screen. Actually, let me just move this down for you. I'll just quickly do this because this is something I really felt was really important that I wanted to show you. So we can see here we've got a pivot. I entered a pivot trade which was a nice little 16 tick trade, and I was about to go back downstairs, but I thought this would be a great example because I've got such strong divergence here on the platinum and a bounce off the pivot. There's a strong chance, no guarantee, that this will roll over and turn into a T10. Now the T10s, which are the money in the floor trades, generally, for me anyway, I've got around an 85% accuracy rate. So what may very well happen here is we see a rollover of our short-term stoke and it turns into a T10 and heads down towards the 89 EMA. Now of course it may very well punch up and go right up through. That could happen as well. So I'm just going to let this run for a little while. I'll put this recording on hold and let's just see what happens, because if I see my short-term rollover, I will short the market again. Now as you can see here, I set my initial target here earlier in this channel for 16 ticks. We've come down, we've bounced out of a channel as I predicted. However, good chance we'll roll over and continue down. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this on hold and come back in a few minutes and let's see what's happening. Traders, I just received an email from one of my students. I thought this was be a really good example in reference to he's trading live right now, and should he take this T1 that we have just set up. The reason I haven't taken this T2 I should say, and we can see here we've got a perfect slingshot trade has come down, what appears to be perfect. It's with the trend fully extended, but note how close we are to the pivot where we've just had very strong divergence and a pivot bounce. Now remember, I talk about becoming a sniper, that is just waiting for a setup that meets the conditions. Now for me, this is a higher risk slingshot trade. It's not even worth taking. Why? We're coming off very strong divergence. We're very close to the pivot, which is going to be very strong resistance generally speaking. Even though it looks great down below, if we look here we can see that we're fully oversold with the short term. We've rolled up, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm predicting and that this will turn into a T10, into a money on the floor. So once again, why not take this? Well, the paint bar wouldn't have appeared until this candle here, but look how close we are to that resistance level. So we're very close to that pivot, and with that strong divergence, it's not a trade that I would take. I feel it's too high a risk. Down here, of course, look at all this room we've got to go. Now remember, generally speaking, that we'll move from pivot to pivot, and of course one way of setting the targets is to aim for the pivot. If you punch through, as an example here, by the way, when I'm pivot trading, if I'm going to be trading a pivot from here up to here, generally I'd like to see the punch through the pivot, pull back, then continue in the direction of the trend. Now here it happened to actually do this. Now some people call this no man's land because it's actually right in the middle in between pivots. However, if we look down here, we've been overboard on our long term. This is a really nice T2 trade and a T1 we had signal here. So once again, the reason we didn't take this, we're so close to the pivot of very strong divergence and a very good pivot bounce. Now if you've watched my earlier video where I took this trade live, look how we've bounced out of that channel. As I said earlier, we may come down, and I expect we'll come down to at least the 89, but let's see what happens. Now we're starting to get a nice little crossover here, so we're starting to get a T10 formation. Now remember, We want to wait, unlike what I did up here, you want to wait for the candle to close in the direction of your trade. So you can see how slow this market is moving. Look at this here, 49, nothing's happened to 44. So we've got a few contracts going through, not a lot of movement at this stage. So traders, we can see we're down to 13 contracts before this candle closes. I'm actually going to short the market, and I'm going to go for 14 or 15 ticks on this trade. I'm just waiting for this to close, and I'll short this. It's not a perfect T10, and the reason being I'm still oversold. However, experience tells me that there's a very good chance, in all probability, that is talking statistics and probabilities here, that we will deliver at least 12, 14, 15 ticks further down in this particular trade. Now, my ideal stop, by the way, really is above this pivot. Now, normally speaking, what I would do, and let me just go back to the large pointer. Normally, of course, and let me just get this right, normally my stop would be a few ticks above here, above the little swing high. However, in this particular case, because I've got a pivot up here, there's a good chance, and let me just short 10 contracts here. Where are we? Get these on.
Order filled.
Here we go. And what happened? Okay, now the market was slow to pick up, and I've actually shorted 20 contracts there. So what I am going to do is just lift my stop. Now this can happen, and this is one thing that happens with my trading platform at times. So let me just adjust this down here, traders. Let me go a little further down. I'm going to go 16. Okay, let me just pull this up. Okay, all right, is it you got to be very careful on double clicking on your trading dome, because if your internet's a little slow at the time, of course you can particularly with the way I've got my trading dome set up, I can have a double entry, and which is what's just happened, but that's okay. Confident with this trade anyway. So we can see this is rolling over very nicely. So I'll put this recording on hold, and we'll come back. So you can see here it's very slowly ticking down. Another 3 or 4 minutes have just passed. Of course, another way of explaining a T10, if you notice here, this is our first lower high. So you can see here we've gone up, tick down, and now we've got a lower high. And I also, you can see if you draw a trend line here, you can see here we've had a T1 counter trend effectively set up here. So we're slowly ticking out, but see that lower high? So your T10s are really getting your first lower high or higher low in a new potential trend. So we'll just go back on hold, and we'll just patiently wait. It's by the way, it's here in Australia now, it's 6 minutes to 8 p.m. I'm really not meant to be trading right now. I'm meant to be with the family before I retire and have my early rise ready to trade the US market. So I'm going to go back on hold, and I might just wait for this to deliver, go downstairs for a while and come back up, and just wait for this to deliver. I'll say that again. Cheers. Hey, just while we're waiting for this trade to move, traders, what I've done is actually just increase my target to 20 ticks. Now, one of the reasons I've done that, also just looking at what my risk is on this trade, it's also 20 ticks. So I want to make sure at all times, that is 95% of the times, let me get my facts right, 95% of the times I want to have a minimum of 1-to-1 risk reward. Those of you that watched my recording or my trades from this morning would have seen one of the trades I was about 3 or 4 ticks off that per contract compared to my risk, because we're bouncing off the low of a day and I wanted to front run the market. So that's something you really want to do at times. But here there's no reason except for time in my particular case, because I want to retire very soon. It's now 8 p.m. That why I can't have a much larger target here. Now the other consideration is of course is time. It's 8 p.m. and we have in 2.5 hours. I said earlier, I think that it was retail sales. It's actually unemployment figures, and the PPI claims at 10:30 p.m. My time. So the market may be particularly slow leading up to those red flags, and of course I always make sure that I've closed out any positions a good 10 minutes or so before any red flags. And now if it's a major Fed announcement, it'll be a few hours beforehand. So and one other thing with my trading dome here, with TradeStation, when you place a trade, you can actually have a confirmation box come up and confirm the number of contracts. As some of you saw me do earlier, I double clicked and did a double order entry. I'm quite happy and comfortable with that because of my risk reward. Remember, I never ever risk any more than 2%, so I'm well under that for every trade that I take. Now for newer traders, I really recommend that keep that facility up. If you're scalping, it can be really annoying. That is, when the little box pops up and it wants to confirm the number of contracts you're shorting or going long, because sometimes it's just annoying to have. So just keep that in mind, that if you're new to TradeStation, and my clients or your clients that are using TradeStation know that little quirk, just to keep the box on until you master the art of using or at least placing your orders. It's not a whole lot to really talk about until this delivers, which I'm fairly confident it will. So I'm going to put this on hold and go and spend some time with the family, and I'll come back and give you a rundown what happens to this later on. Thank you. Hello traders, you've probably heard the terminology like watching oil paint dry. This is very slow movement. We're starting to get a little more movement towards my trade. Let me give you a little bit of selfish self-promotion while we're waiting for this trade to deliver 20 ticks of profit. I've packaged my top 10 strategies, the indicator settings. If you've got TradeStation, I currently have all the indicators for all of these settings, and I'm just sourcing NinjaTrader at the moment. Either way, I've got all of the settings that you can set up your own indicators on whichever trading platform you wish. So if you wish to model exactly the trades that I take, the T10s, the T2s, the T1s, the 89 bounces, the 200 bounces, the pivot bounces, all of that sort of thing, I've got them in my top 10 strategies. Your investment for that is $197. I give you all of the indicator settings and of course 5 hours of recorded training. Now, as you all know, my target each day is $200 plus per contract traded. Just one contract traded and you've got your investment back, traders, in one day. So there's my email address if you'd like to find out more or to order the indicators and my indicator settings, I should say, and the recorded training. Let me get it right. It's what time is it now? It's 8:30 p.m. It's almost my bedtime to get up in a few hours time. So if you've seen my videos, these strategies work. Traders, if you want to make money, it's the greatest business to be in. And if you just look at the trades that we call each day, or I call, you watch me trade live every day, you see that success rate. My trade setups, they're 95% mechanical. The areas of that make it unmechanical are, for an example, I just noticed that there's some bank holidays in Europe that will affect, so you need to check red flags, etc. But otherwise all of my trade setups are what we call rules based. By having rules based trading, it removes the personal judgment required for most of trading, and it just makes it a lot easier to trade. So for $197 traders, you get my top 10 strategies, indicator settings, 5 hours of recorded training, plus of course I'll answer any emails etc that you've got. So that's the end of my self promotion. Just why I thought we're waiting for this paint to dry. Not really waiting for this trade to deliver. I'm only going to give it another 30 minutes, then I'm going to exit. I might even do that in a couple of minutes actually, because as I mentioned earlier, without repeating myself, I'm up at 3:30 a.m. so it's basically my retirement time for me to go and get some shut-eye in about 30 minutes. Now we're up, what are we up? We're up 12 ticks on this trade at the moment. We can see it's turned into a very nice T10, and what I'm actually going to do while I'm online, we may as well just pull this up. Oops, let me just pull that up. We want this to tick down a little, and we'll exit this trade. Come on, down you come. I'll just put this on hold. We're like, what's it going to do? Who knows what it's going to do, traders? Let me just go up so I can close this order out. So let's just let this close out. So I don't normally trade. Here we go. So we're out. Very nice profit there. So I'm up per contract, including that earlier trade, less brokerage, about $180 a contract.